Hi there and welcome back. Well, here we go again. Today I am going to try and answer some questions sent in from subscribers. There is one huge great can of worms that I seem to have opened, and I'm going to try and clarify something quite technical, but we'll keep that one to the end. Do keep sending in any questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find out and report back, which is what I had to do in this very technical case. Now, in one of my recent videos, I discussed conducting from the keyboard, which prompted a few questions and requests for an opinion. First off, Trumpet Tim asks, what piano skills are the most necessary to learn for an MD whose main instrument is not the piano? Well, I'm assuming firstly that you don't have anyone to play for rehearsals, and maybe you use tracks for rehearsal purposes. You clearly read music, and as such you need to have a good ear for when any singer is not singing the right notes. Now that kind of sounds obvious, but some inexperienced and non-music reading performers will sing what sounds right to them and is still within the harmonic sequence of the number. Very naughty. But in answer to your question then, you would need to be able to thump out the melody on the piano or a keyboard. When it comes to running the show with the band, it makes no difference whatsoever. Anyone from a brass player to a bass player can be the MD. So a direct answer to the question of what skills are needed, recognise it's wrong and be able to play what's right. But as far as cueing is concerned, you do it exactly like you would if you were on the piano. Also, in response to the same video, Angus Drennan asks on what opinion I have on keyboard 2 being the conductor part. He says, I actually prefer working from these when conducting a larger band ensemble, as I am just adding the colours as opposed to doing the heavy lifting piano-wise, as it leaves his hands free to cue more. Angus then continues, I am often inclined to make the conductor part the auxiliary keyboard. It sounds like Angus writes his own parts, and if that is the case, Angus, you're free to write whichever part you prefer as the conductor, giving the cues. I have no strong opinions on this either way, other than I think it's important you therefore have a reliable keys 1 player that's doing the bulk of the piano work. And if you're arranging keys 2 to do the majority of the ancillary instruments, you may feel they are secondary within the arrangement and therefore can concentrate on the directing as well as changing the numerous patches while playing. I say numerous patches because that's likely to be what's in the second keyboard part. But then, Angus, if you're writing it, you can choose. If you can do both, then that's fine, but I'm sure a huge amount would depend on the musical style you're playing and how busy each keys part is. And certainly with a rock pop type musical, the band can usually play itself once it's got going. With regard to the video on conducting from the keyboard also, Stuart Darling said, one other thing which I have done for many years and believe is the best idea for small bands, although I've had 14 on this system before, is to have a microphone as the MD. Have the whole band on headphones and verbally count in rather than physically cue. Excellent idea, and if the band are on headphones and using click tracks, this is a really easy setup. Of course, for everything you say and sing, you'll have a guaranteed audience. Chris Spiteri writes, some musicals don't come with a full orchestral score. A score which you can watch all the band parts at the same time. Instead, you get a piano conductor score with little information. What do you do in that case? Well, piano conductor scores these days do contain a huge amount of information, I feel. The vast majority won't come with a full orchestral score. However, there are more and more full scores being made available through some license holders. MTI is one of these companies and have a list on their website of which musicals are available in full score for an additional fee. Other than these, there are basically two types of scores that are likely to be supplied that are not full orchestral scores, in the traditional sense that is. The first would be a piano conductor score, which is more popular nowadays, which is basically a piano accompaniment score with vocals and an indication as to which instruments are playing at any one time. Here's an example. At bar 29 you can clearly see that the clarinet, violin and trumpet 1 is playing together with tempo block on percussion. and piano. Then 3 bars later, more instruments join in. The other type of score would be the traditional vocal score, which is just vocals and a piano reduction. Having said that, the vast majority of these do have some orchestral indications. See this example. Only very old productions would have no indication, and in this instance I would normally mark up the score myself if I know what is likely to be playing at the time, but it's very rare you would see anything like this. Before I go on, if you want to just play those 3 examples I showed you back and identify which musicals each of them's from, no, there isn't a prize. Anyway, Chris also then went on to say, when you're hidden on stage and the producers decide to get screens with a camera on for you and the company, how do you deal with latency on the screen? I've used a similar system once and I could see myself counting beat way after I was really beating it. Now, this is the can of worms I mentioned. In a recent video, I was talking about when bands are remote and away from the usual position in a pit. During the video, I talked about having a video feed so performers are able to see the MD for cues. Now, this has opened up a bit of a debate. I should have mentioned in the video, and I didn't, that these systems can sometimes be troublesome in as far as there can be problems surrounding latency, or should I say, a short delay in your actual action and the same action appearing on the monitor. Of course, if it's only a matter of milliseconds, but anything longer than say 40 milliseconds, and you'll start to suffer with latency. Now, I have posted on a couple of groups on Facebook where I know there will be individuals that work in this area for some guidance. And the guidance I got back is slightly mixed, but I have collated the common facts surrounding this subject in the hope that you can be made aware of what to look out for. For any monitor that you as the MD uses to keep an eye on what's happening on stage, any latency really isn't an issue. However, for monitors for the company to use, this is more vital, particularly if your cue at the end of a musical number, the come off. If there's going to be a delay there, there's going to be some trouble. I once did a production at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon here in the UK, and even the monitors used there had some slight latency. The overriding message from me in such circumstances is, if you are conscious of any latency, don't, whatever you do, try to compensate for it in your conducting style. It will lead to an uncoordinated mess. But let's look at some of the reasons this can happen and how to avoid it. And I'm going to try and explain in layman's terms, being a layman myself in this area of technology. This is going to get a bit technical. You ready for this? Okay. First fact I was given was that latency is likely to be much more pronounced and obvious in any system that uses a digital signal within the setup that you're using. Certainly any system that is wireless in any way should be avoided at all costs. Tom McNeed said, CRT televisions give the lowest latency but are difficult to get hold of now. TVs with a gaming mode will give better performance. Also make sure any image processing done on the TV is switched off. Tom Robertson also stay away from upscaling camera feeds to HDMI, etc. Patrick Huber, an older camera and older CRT television connected with an RCA cable. I've run over 200 feet of RCA cable and is as stable as any newer HDMI setup. Zero latency, analog end to end. Zach Moore said, the monitors don't need to be analog as long as the camera and splitter are analog. I use a Bullet CCTV camera and TFT LCD headrest monitor for band monitoring. Ian Good said, analog for the best but hard to source, and I must say even with video both ways I've never had any issues. The best I've had is a mini 5-inch monitor on every music stand. Digital again, but no perceived latency. And then we come to a more technical answer. Ready? Let's take a deep breath. Deep Howell said, Analog, as many others have noted.
Be on the lookout for old, large TV sets with video inputs. You can use regular broadcast inputs as long as you have a converter from composite video to channel 3 RF. I work mostly in school systems, and most of those have old TV sets from a prior broadcasting life that are covered with dust, and yours for the asking. Composite is baseband, very low frequency, and can tolerate very long runs as well as splitters. I run one analog camera in the pit, split the feed there, and run it to both wings. Split it again and send it other places. A baseband video amp can be useful with long runs or lots of splits. F-connected barrel connectors to couple cables if needed. Adapters to get from RCA to F, and vice versa, also useful, as are a few 10 dB pads in the event you have too much signal. That does happen, and I found those old TVs don't handle video overload well. I use RG6 with type F connectors for the runs, and adapt from the camera to the feed line, and the feed line to the TV RCA inputs.
Whew, I'm losing the will. So, so I hope that clears things up. I think what all this means, that if it's suggested you use monitors for cueing your cast, be aware. Have a think and always talk to your technical people specifically about this possible issue. If it's already set up in the venue when you arrive and you haven't had that conversation, it's too late. You've been warned. And one final tip on this subject of latency, I would advise you just send this video to your technical team. Cut out the middleman. That's it for now then. Keep the questions coming. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.